Master of the garden, how to grow clematis like a maestro of flowers. The very blooms resemble water lilies floating on liquid air, by Walter Bound, first published on The Environment. I know when I first fell in love with Mary Jane, my wife. It was on that stereotypical West Side Story dance floor, even spotting her across a crowded room like strangers in the night. But when did I fall for a clematis? Pronounced clematis. Perhaps it was all those strolls at Longwood Gardens in Chadford, Pennsylvania, 30 miles southwest of Philadelphia. If legal, could my ashes be scattered there in that garden oasis? There are around 380 species of clematis within the buttercup family. Ranunculate. My Latin is pretty bad. These are not native to New Jersey or the Americas, but China and Japan. The flower is also called a leather flower. That makes sense. Its petals can appear as leather. I love flowers that vine, like the tropical bougainvillea, which I cannot grow in southern New Jersey because, I'm not in Italy and France, and the mandevilla, rock trumpet, which I have successfully overwintered and returned to the garden for the hummingbirds and the butterflies and for my senses. I even trellis cucumbers. And once I tried baby watermelons, and that was really bad. So sometime in 2015, I bought my first clematis. And it still thrives despite my accidental methods of passive destruction. I love all varieties of clematis. Love the afterflower too. Needs sun, but wants its roots in shade with good compost and free from competition with the weeds. It needs a trellis, thrice higher than expected. I learned so much about the plant from Longwood. Longwood had numerous displays of clematis by its experimental garden. This area had 20 raised beds and all decorated with various types of flowers and colors, designs, arrangements. My family, wife and daughters, Madeline and Nancy, loved voting on their top 3 beds. Around the beds, I was struck by the variety of this peculiar and spectacular flower. Even the seed after the petals have fallen, like a maiden undressing after a prom. So many colors, shapes, and all with similar shaped leaves, like a heart-shaped box, oval and elliptical, and various sizes and shades of green, from chartreuse green to fern green to jay green. I have not tried this yet, but I have with other plants, but clematis can be propagated by division, layering, or stem cutting, according to the North Carolina State Extension. Clematis is a perennial. That means it will die back, leaving what seems fragile, thin, copper-colored wires behind with brown leaves that can be crushed easily by hand, not the vine, and composted by releasing to the woodwinds. It's known as the Queen of the Vines, and for good reason. The name comes from the Greek clematis, for a climbing vine. Wow, you just changed the K to a C, and you got yourself a word. It's best to cut back the vines in the fall. Depends on the type. I'll get to that. I've even heard of cutting back by half, if you have a group 3 clematis, you want it down to 12 inches. It's also best to have loose soil with a neutral pH level, not too acidic, not too alkaline, well drained too, and don't allow those roots to wallow in water. For most varieties and for dynamic blooms, clematis needs about 6 hours of sun. Flowering plants, of course, like vegetables and fruits that grow from a flower, like peppers, tomatoes, raspberries, and strawberries, need sun and warmth. These plants, especially the clematis, like a good blanket of fresh compost. No wood, please, or pine needles to keep the roots cool and moist. Like tomato plants that started at the base of the Andes, these plants like water on the base, not leaves, and water in the morning. The water that would run down the Andes, and the vines that would stretch out and luxuriate in the sun. Clematis is one flower that even looks good after the bloom, like I said, leaving a spiral seed that's delicate and complex. Sometimes I just look at the complexity and wonder at the wonders of nature. I don't know if I like that sentence. wonder at the wonders of nature? Like how a spider knows the perfection and beauty of geometry without having to study for a test. Perhaps we could all learn something from nature, and that's a capital N. I have been noticing more and more clematis for sale in area big box stores like Lowe's and even Walmart. My concern is that consumers may not know the demands of that small plant with the one or two beautiful blooms and will have a short shelf life. A hardy clematis may even outlive us if properly tended. It's hardy in the USA from zones 4 to 8. Like many plants, including what my wife calls an old lady flower, the hydrangea, it is essential to know how to prune. Prune wrong, no flowers, just green, or worse, dead plant. There are 3 categories. Group 1, these type of plants bloom on old wood and require no pruning except to control the size, in which case prune lightly after flowering back to a pair of healthy buds, sort of like roses. Group 2, these type of plants bloom first on the old wood and then again on new. I have a bunch of these. Prune lightly in the early spring to shape and remove weak growth, and then prune after the bloom if desired. Group 3 plants, they flower on new growth and can be cut back to 12 inches in the early spring. This group is ideal for growing through shrubs as an old growth is removed annually. And that information I got from Wild Flower Farm. Check them out. I love playing with various shapes and colors for clematis for effect. The bloom times in southern New Jersey, where I live, depend on the variety and its position to the sun, as well as other elements as soil conditions, competition for nutrients. It doesn't like competitors. Neither do I. No, that's not actually true. I like competition, as well as rain. I have rain barrels, but with the shortage of rain this year, in the East Coast, I had to rely on my spigot more than I want. Fortunately, we had a good rain the other night, so my water barrels are full again. That's good. I have 5 or 6 reservoirs, too, for excess rain. And you know what? The birds like it, too. I just keep it covered to make sure the mosquitoes don't breed. Clematis can put on quite a show, almost like a wall of color and design. After the first hardy bloom, another bloom, a second or third, can return in the season, but don't expect anything like that first burst. Framing, as well as protecting the roots and vines of the clematis with other perennials or annuals, can add a nice artistic touch, either as contrast, like fragrant purple lavender with clematis of white, or small burst of orange and yellow coreopsis against clematis of purple. It can supply color and texture when the clematis goes dormant later in the season. I also love when the first bloom appears in late spring. I usually see the first bloom on my trellis on the north side of the garden, where it enjoys full sun but shade for its roots. Watch out if you plan to grow something like sweet autumn clematis. It's a late blooming aggressive vine. It's deciduous. That means it sheds its leaves annually, a tree or a bush. But unlike other varieties, its fragrance in the late summer and early autumn is intoxicating. It also prefers shade. It often relishes the shade, actually, sending vines heavenward for the flowers. This takes over my white trellis by the shade garden and has to be cut back almost to its base. And it will grow as if on steroids. It grows so well, it will leap from trellis to tree to lilac and then try scaling my brick chimney. I think I've even seen it invade the neighbor's patio. I've since learned, and I cut back the vines almost every 2 weeks, hoping for those delicate white clusters come late summer. Most clematis, unlike, say, the passion flower, another pernicious vine that once established grows like a California wildfire, has no dominating odor. For that, choose peonies, double delight roses, gardenias, and lavender, or other flowers that you find on the internet that you need for the odor. Happy gardening. Hope you enjoy these tips. I'll be writing next on azaleas and a rhododendron, and then maybe about raspberries, because they're really doing well this year. These are easier plants, but like humans, we all need the right conditions to thrive, right? Some plants are extroverts, like me, and some, like hostas, are introverts. And we all need different types of soil. All right, everyone, take care, happy gardening, and be good. Don't be stupid.